Alright, so up until this point, you guys have looked at genetics problems that follow Gregor-Mendel's rules, right? So these are the simple dominant and recessive. We call them autosomal dominant and recessive traits because these are the traits that occur not on the sex chromosomes, but that follow the dominant and recessive rules. I mentioned in an earlier lesson that Gregor-Mendel got lucky because not all of the traits follow those rules. And so what I want to do is start to look at some situations where traits don't follow those rules. And we're going to start with incomplete dominance. Incomplete dominance. In incomplete dominance, the dominant allele is not strong enough to completely cover the recessive. And so what you're going to end up with is an example, a situation like in this example. The example is 4 o'clock plants, where you have red plants here and you have white plants, but when you cross the red and the white together, the offspring turn out to be pink. Okay, so this middle thing right here is the cross between the red and the white, and what you see in this type of inheritance is a blend. So you know you're dealing with incomplete dominance when you have a blend of both of the alleles together. Now, assigning alleles to these are difficult because it's like they're both dominant, right? So we're going to use a big R for red, right? And we want to use a white, or an allele for the white, right? And we can't switch letters, right? We know that's the rule. You cannot switch letters. And because you can't switch letters, we still have to use an R. But if you use a lowercase r, it's going to confuse you because you're going to forget that the lowercase r actually means it's going to blend with the uppercase r. So we've got to use an uppercase r. We have to figure out how to distinguish between the red r and the white r. So usually what happens on the EOC is they'll do that. So they mark the white one with a little tick mark. I have also seen this scenario where instead you use the gene C for color, CR for red, and CW for white, so the base letter is still C, okay? You just mark the C's with the color that you mean. That's another acceptable way to do these problems. So either of these ways, that's how you're going to assign the alleles for these traits. So the nice thing about these problems is if you are a red plant, the only alleles you can have are big R's, right? If you're a white plant, the only alleles you can have are big R primes. And if you're a pink, you've got one of each. So there is one genotype for every phenotype, which means if you know the phenotype, you also know the genotype. So let's show how this looks on a square. Here's our red plant. And we'll just put the red on top for this example. Here's our white plant. There's its alleles, right? And you just fill it out like a normal Punnett square. And that's it. And you can see that all of the offspring from this cross have this big R prime. That's it. That's incomplete dominance. You can do other things. You can cross, for example, a pink and a red. So if you wanted to take a pink plant and a red plant, let's do that cross right here in the corner. You could take an R prime, right? There's the pink. Here's the red on the side, RR. You could even do this with a pink and a white. It doesn't matter. But you can do any kind of combination with these that you want. Okay? So here's 2 red offspring, right? Here's a red offspring, here's a red offspring. And then 2 of the offspring will be R prime. Those 2 offspring are pink. Alright, so that's incomplete. Now let's look at another situation of codominance. And we're doing these 2 together because you do the Punnett squares the same way and you assign the alleles the same way. In codominance, instead of the dominant not quite being dominant enough to completely cover, in this case you actually have two alleles that are both dominant. And an example of this is Andalusian fowl, where if I cross a black chicken with a white chicken, I get this guy right here, and I call it checkerboard because you can see the black and white together. Same situation as in incomplete dominance, where the black is big B, and the white, because we can't switch letters, still has to be big B, but we use the B prime. Okay, now this is the only way I've ever seen this show up on the EOC. So again, if you cross your black chicken, we'll put the black here, with your white chicken, and you put that onto a Punnett square, all of the offspring are B prime. So you can see why we talk about these two together, right? And B prime, all of these are the black and white, or the checkerboard chicken, right? So the black is big B, right? The white was B prime. All right. And again, like I said, the Punnett squares are going to look the same. So it's not difficult. Once you know how to do one, you know how to do both of these types of inheritance. Could I cross two of the checkerboard chickens together? Yeah, I could do that. I could cross a black and a checkerboard, or a white and a checkerboard. You cross two whites, two blacks, whatever. It really doesn't matter in these. You still perform the Punnett square the same way. You just have a slightly different way of writing the alleles. All right, last thing to do with this is just to illustrate the difference between them. Okay, their Punnett squares are the same. Okay, so don't let this freak you out. I know we're talking about two types of inheritance here, but there's not that much to it. Okay, really the difference is in recognizing the scenarios. So let's go through 4 scenarios. If I take blue monsters and cross them with yellow monsters, and all of the babies turn out green, what kind of inheritance is it? Well, blue and yellow blend together to make green, so you've got a blending of inheritance here. So when they blend, we know it's incomplete, right? Incomplete dominance. When you have a blue and a yellow monster and you cross them and all the babies are blue with yellow spots, where we can see both side by side, so when they're both expressed, that expressed got cut off, but when they're both expressed, this is codominance, right? So codominance is when they are both expressed. That's co. If you have a dog with blue eyes and you cross it with a dog with green eyes and all the babies have one blue eye and one green eye, again, both are expressed here, so this is also codominance. If I take red monsters and I cross them with blue monsters and all the babies are purple, blue and red blend, which means this is incomplete. And that's it. That's incomplete and codominance.